The Old School is brought to you by Ahart Solutions, which provides school surveys and applied research. More information at ahartsolutions.com.
And good morning. Welcome to the Old School podcast about the American education system, its traits, its qualities, its quirks, its problems, solutions, insofar as we know the solutions, but we have been known to dabble into other things. And with me in this endeavor, my good friend, Dr. Stephen Bourgeois. Good morning, sir.
Herr Miller, it's good to see you.
What's going on?
I'm really chipper this morning. Well, I'm not chipper.
Chipper?
No, I just want to say chipper. It's kind of fun. No, I'm tired. I slept in and I fell asleep in my chair trying to watch the news. And the news put me to sleep, apparently. But I just woke up minutes before jumping on the podcast. So I'm not my normal chipper self, come to think of it.
The news will do that to you. First of all, you should never start your day with the news, I don't think.
Yeah, you should start with the written word, if anything, or a brisk walk. That would be a good idea too.
Both of those things, or a brisk walk while listening to the written word on a book on tape or something along those lines. Do they call them book on tapes anymore?
You can put it on your, what do you call it? What's the little thing? It's not a Walkman, but it's one of those first generation things. What's it called?
iPod?
iPod?
Do you like wear an iPod? Yeah,
No.
they like the runners. They wear it on. They have like a band on their bicep, and they wear it on that.
But it just gives you music, right, or recordings.
Or I guess it gives you anything you have downloaded on it.
Okay, I was thinking about a cassette tape and a Walkman.
Well, you can do that as well.
Okay,
you'll be the only person still doing that, but there may be something poetic about it.
Now that you have an iPhone, the latest generation, I might add.
I have the latest generation?
Well, you have one, to be specific.
I have one, and my kids, my students, routinely laugh at the fact that it has a home button, which apparently is not cool anymore to have a home button. I have the most basic model of iPhone that one has ever devised, and I have it.
Okay, and we've already talked about your apps, but I think secretly you're adding more and more apps. Natural way of things, and you could deny, but I'll consider this a non-denial denial.
Well, let me tell you something. I actually wasn't an argument, but the gym that I go to, they have a thing where people can take their phones and put it next to a reader, and it's like a way for them to check in.
That's a new technology. They've been doing that.
Well, I don't know if it's new, but I mean, they
everybody is. You have an app, and you just hold it up there, and you walk through it.
So when I first walked in, or I don't know when it was, maybe the second or third time I walked in, they said, you can bring your phone in, and you can just. I said, yeah, I'm not doing that. I said, and they're like, why? I said, I don't feel the need to bring my phone to the gym when I'm trying to focus on working out. That's why you got some schmuck sitting on a weight bench, strolling through God knows what, instead of working out, hogging up the bench 30 minutes longer than he needs to. Or you just have some people that just give up. They just walk into the gym, plant themselves in the corner. And I don't know what their thought process is. You pay the money to ostensibly to work out, and they're just sitting in the corner looking at, every once in a while they'll get up and they'll do a stretch, and then they'll sit back down again, and then they'll stroll for another 30 minutes on the phone. And so I don't know. To me, I don't see the point of having it there. Maybe there's a point, and I just don't know it. But every time I walk in, here's the other thing. So the gym I go to, they're supposed, I assume, they're supposed to have somebody on the front desk to greet you. I don't know. Try that. See how that works out as a business. Greet the customers as they come in. And since everybody has the phone and they just do the phone thing to check in, sometimes they don't even have anybody at the desk.
They don't need to. You just scan it and the turns green, beeps, and you walk through it.
Yeah, but when I walk in, I don't have a phone. I certainly don't have my phone with me. And so I walk in and I'm ready. And what I'm supposed to do is give them my phone number.
Yeah.
And when there's no one there, I just walk in.
Wow.
Screw it. That's their problem. If they don't want to man the desk, that's not my issue to solve. Second, when there's someone there, you could see they're almost visibly put out by the fact they had to actually enter in 10 numbers.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they?
And I was like, what are we doing?
Nobody
What
types anymore.
what's that?
Nobody likes to type anymore. Um, they also have analytics for that, because if you had the app, it would tell you how many times you were there in April or March and for how long.
Why do they care?
They don't
As long as they're getting their money, why do they care? It's people
They don't
collecting.
care. That's not the point. It's an app for you to look at how
No,
often you're availing yourself of the workout facility.
I know how often I'm at there. I don't need an app to tell me how many times I'm there in a month. I know how many times I'm there in a month. To me, it just seems like businesses collect information just for giggles. Let's just collect information. Let's see what these people are up to. To me, it seems invasive.
Well, you're being evasive right now. Walking
Oh,
around,
invasive, yes.
you're walking around a gym without a telephone, and you're the only one without a phone.
Yes, probably so. I assume. Everyone else seems to have one, but not everyone's looking at it. There's a lot of people working really hard in the gym, but then you'll have about 10% of the folks just sitting around doing nothing but being on their phone. And I would think that there would be cheaper places to do that without a gym membership. So
It's an interesting distraction because people have them on when they're on the treadmills. They have earphones on and or earplugs, whatever it is, and walking around. So essentially, everybody's on their own. There's really probably a lot less interaction. A workout club used to be kind of a pickup place where people would talk and make deals, and suddenly nobody's even interacting with each other.
well, I think there's possibility that there's still some picking up going on.
Okay, they just do it by you connect your phones to each other. Have you done that before?
It sounds dirty. No.
Yeah, somebody has a QR code, and you do, and then the information sharing contacts. So it's something we do at conferences, rather than typing or having a business card. You just hold it up, and they hold it up, and suddenly the contact is populated with all their information.
God almighty. No, I'm not doing that.
It's a brave new world here, Miller.
I want no part of it. I will say before we get to the topic at hand, I have kind of rediscovered the greatness of the trumpeter Doc Severinsen. I think if you grew up in my generation, Doc Severinsen was always the leader of the band, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And a lot of times he was almost this comical figure because he had these goofy pants, or he'd wear something goofy, and then he would turn around and the band would play. And I was always interested in Shaughnessy, the drummer, so I'd watch him, but I wouldn't necessarily pay much attention to Severson. But what I have found over the last month is I have found an increasing number of clips and some audio about Doc Severinsen as the trumpeter, and he was amazing. He was extraordinary.
Is he still with us?
I don't know. He is not. I saw him live actually one time because I went to a football game in Knoxville, Tennessee, the University of Tennessee. They were playing LSU, and he was doing the national anthem, and I think he also did some sort of thing right before the national anthem. And even then, it didn't strike me because he played one tune. Is not particularly innovative. The way he played the national anthem, because you don't get too innovative with that. And then, so I've seen him, but I just didn't have an understanding of how good he was until, say, like I said, like the last month.
Well, you may have to change this to the present tense here, Miller, because people are saying that he is 97 years old, born on July 7th, 1927. So he's
still
here
alive.
with us, still alive. He's still alive.
Is he still playing the trumpet?
We'll have to ask him. I happen to have Doc Severinsen right here. Um, but yeah, he was a screamer. I mean, he could play the high stuff, and that was kind of his claim to fame.
And see, I think that's what I like because it's one of the reasons why I like Maynard Ferguson.
Mhm.
Because Maynard Ferguson has got this humongous sound. And if you don't know Maynard Ferguson, my dear listening audience, you do know his work. Because if you're familiar with the Rocky theme, Mancini was the one. Excuse me, not Mancini. Ferguson was the one who did that tune, and so
The whole soundtrack was written by Bill Conti.
yeah, and so he was the trumpeter. So what Maynard Ferguson was, and so um, I think Henry Mancini's also done a version of it as well, but I think Maynard Ferguson was the original. So you know his work even if you don't know the name and you're not that much up on jazz. But
Well, a fun fact: he was born in Arlington, Oregon, and quite frankly, I don't know where Arlington, Oregon is. Now, coming from the state, um,
you can't
but
be expected to know where every tiny town in Oregon is, are you?
let's call it a hamlet.
What are you pounding on the keyboard for?
Uh, I'm not looking on the internet for it. I'm thinking really, really hard about that. But it seems to be on the Columbia River, so the northern border of Canada, Oregon, and Washington.
Yeah. I
So
was about
it's
to explain to you the geography in that region. I was kind of shocked that you made that faux pas, but
no. I'm making a transition to our topic here, Miller. I'm pretty clever.
well, the topic has to do with traveling around the world, and we have done plenty of travel episodes on here before, but we have a plan, my wife and I do, that before my daughter goes into high school, at the very latest, sometime while she's in high school, so we're talking about 2028 or shortly thereafter, we wanted to do an around the world trip with our daughter. Now, lest you think that this podcast is allowing us to basically roll in the dough and spend money on a round the world trip, I would caution you to rethink that proposition because in reality, the trip itself is not that much money. So who we're going through and who we will go through is American Airlines, and they have this One World, and they have these partner airlines that they interact with. And those keyboards are so loud. What are you doing? You need to move the microphone away from the keyboard.
I take notes while you're talking. Normally, it doesn't pick up.
And
Uh,
so it's picking up loud and clear right now. So,
I'm doing it surreptitiously. Um, I'm
but
actually,
anyway,
yeah.
so
Go ahead.
we're planning on this trip, and it can be organized by how many stops you make. That's basically the main determinant as to how much this costs. And per person, the tickets cost anywhere between $5,000 to $6,000
Really?
to go
So,
around the world.
but not your lodgings.
No. This is just the flights around the world. And so the thought is that we could, and we've been saving money for a while, and we've picked up some extra money with the sale of the house and that sort of thing. But we've been saving money for the idea of doing this around the world trip. And for $5,000 or $6,000, we're looking at a 6-stop trip. So 5 at the least. But the question then becomes, if you had an around the world option, where would you go? And so that's basically what the impetus for this particular episode is. We've had a couple of heavy topics with regards to education, and those episodes have been great. But I thought it might be kind of fun just to kind of lighten up the kind of the ideological content of the show for just a very short while. We have a great episode coming up next week, by the way, but we'll talk more about that at the end of the program. But I thought we'd go ahead and tackle, if you're going to take a trip, which 6 spots would you go?
And so, are we going to draw this out with suspense and drum rolls, or do you just want to hear all 6?
Well, just tackle each 6 and then talk a little bit about why that particular place and then move on to the next one. Yeah, we don't need to be,
Pedantic?
no.
We are pedantic. That's what we do.
No, okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead and be pedantic, I guess.
Okay, are we switching off
I want you to go first and then I'll go last.
Okay, well, I'll give you the full list, and then you can question me. How's that?
Okay.
Do you prefer that? You pause. Do you want to comment one at a time?
Let's just comment one at a time. I'll definitely have comments, but maybe
Or
this
you're
would be a
just
chance to do kind of a preemptive explanation as to why that place, and then maybe that will engender more questions.
okay, because it could be crickets. We've never done crickets in our whole interaction over the years, but wouldn't it be funny if we actually had an awkward moment here, Miller? Just to see how it feels.
We can,
Uh,
sure.
excuse me. Okay. The
Use your
first
cough button.
one,
What are you doing?
I was cracking myself up. I do that sometimes. I just think funny things. The first one, and these are going to be in no particular order. I don't want to rank any of these, but
Okay.
I gave you a bit of a tease earlier, but this one wasn't on there. I would say the country is Romania,
Okay. Is
and
there a particular city?
Transylvania, of course. No, I want to see the countryside. I mean, if there's a castle there, female vampires or something, I wouldn't be upset about that. But no, the beauty of classic horror, I'm talking mainly 1950s and even 60s, is the countryside and the wind and the light, and it, so my idea of a trip would be to visit that place, just to smell the air, to see the light, particularly at dusk. That's when things really get interesting. And wherever Transylvania is, I'm sure there are places, castles. Maybe somebody claims to have the Dracula castle or something like that. But whatever it is, I want to do a bit of walking. I want to walk the countryside and particularly at dusk. And then I want to happen into a pub. And that's going to be a theme of all of these, I believe. But I want to happen into a Romanian pub with the locals who are kind of up in arms. They're very superstitious and they don't really trust strangers. So I'll sit by myself and I'll order some food and some beer or wine, probably beer. And then the waitress will bring me that, and suddenly a figure will open the door and everything will change. So some individual who's relatively frightening, and they'll show their colors, the locals. So that's what I want. I want to go to Romania and experience the landscape of the classic Dracula films.
Now, I don't think I've ever known that you had an affinity for horror. You're not talking about like modern horror where people
Oh
basically
no,
have heads severed and all that other stuff. You're talking about more the classic
yeah,
understated horror, the psychological
well,
horror.
yeah, with Christopher Lee playing Dracula, Van Helsing, um, and this is just terrible to draw a blank on Van Helsing. Who plays Van Helsing? He's
I thought it was Hugh Jackman.
no, come on.
You mean
I've been
the
watching
movie
these.
the movie Van Helsing?
Um, no, he plays the character like in the Horror of Dracula.
Yeah, but Van Helsing is like a vampire hunter, isn't he not?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm sorry, I feel bad. Peter Cushing. That's the one. So those are the two that are in most of those. The definitely the Horror of Dracula is one of my favorite. Some others that may or may not include both of them would be the Brides of Dracula. Dracula has risen from the grave. The
You like
Scars of
those too?
Dracula.
'Cause that would seem to be where it starts getting ridiculous, but you like those as well.
Oh, they're great. They're
Okay.
by this production company called Hammer, so Hammer Horror, and that it's high quality, great actors, and but yeah, no, it's not some of those exploitation type um, vampire films. So though these are a little bit edgy, particularly for the time.
So this is no Anne Rice vampire kind
Oh
of thing
no,
where
no,
there's
this is the real
pets.
deal. Yeah. So no, that would be right up there. I'm surprised we haven't talked about classic horror, but
Maybe that's a future episode.
yeah, I've become a bit of an aficionado, even though I blanked on Peter Cushing, which is crazy. He's one of my favorite actors of all time.
Well, you should know, first of all, that there is an historical Dracula. Dracul is what it was in Romanian.
Dracul.
Vlad the Impaler was the actual guy's name. And there is if I remember the name of the town correctly, there is a place, Sighisoara in Romania, where
Yes.
some of this stuff is located. I don't know if this castle is there. I think the castle of Vlad the Impaler is still in some sort of condition where people could go and visit. But you've never been to Romania before, is that correct?
I've been close, very close. I've
You were in Hungary.
been in Hungary, and so it probably wasn't that far. I don't believe, but I was with students, and you get distracted from your bucket list sometimes, even though you're really, really close. So I
So
took a
after your bucolic wanderings
yeah.
in the region of Transylvania and Romania, where would be the next stop?
Um, After I have my beer there, my pint or whatever,
Right.
um, I think. Well, again, this is going to be jumping around, so there's really not a
Oh,
route here. So forget that idea. But the country of Italy, it is a country, right?
last I checked, yes.
Okay, I want to go to Italy. You and I have been to France, haven't been to Italy, and I'm interested in the wine country and I guess northern Italy and some of the too much movie reference, but where they the Godfather, they went back to the old country. But
That's
I
that's
would love
that's
to.
in the South, though. That's not in the North, so you'd have to.
Well, that's why I need to go there because my geography just sucks. I mean, that's about all I can say about my geography. I have a cheat sheet right here, um, but I'm not clicking because like the clicking. Um, I would go to Rome. So I would want to visit the. Yeah, I want to visit Tuscany. Is that in the south or the north?
Tuscany is in the North.
Okay, so I want to go to Tuscany, but I think more importantly, I want to go to Rome.
Okay. Now, it's interesting because listeners of our podcast will recall that we actually did make it to Italy.
We put our
However,
foot in there, right? So yeah, so I don't count countries like you do here, Miller.
I count countries if you've had a meal or you stayed the night.
Well, we had a meal, um,
Yeah.
but it was about a 3-hour tour, if I remember. And you breaking all kinds of laws, driving around roundabouts.
I wasn't breaking any laws. What are you talking about?
I think we went through a barrier at the passport check, and that you broke the board that they put down there and went flying.
What in the world are you talking about? I didn't do that.
Driving around those hills kind of freaked me out. I went into dream state for the rest of the trip. Yeah, but
Do you remember
but
the town we were in?
Um, n- no, but it was a real great place because we went into a church and did a nice video there. It was beautiful. Do you remember the name?
Chiavenna.
Even.
Chiabenna.
Okay.
It's in
Well,
the
I don't
far
want.
north, not far from it. I think we were we were spending most of our time in Sils Maria, Switzerland, and I think it
Yeah,
was
we're
like
right
an
over the
hour and a
border.
half drive. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm certainly glad we did it, but I would be more interested in visiting Florence, and I think for me more importantly Rome.
Now, if
So
you want to talk about my driving, you might want to ask my father-in-law because there are some things I did in Florence that apparently it's just what Italians do. I mean, it's traffic laws are more suggestions, pieces of advice. If
so
you
they give gestures to each other and say "bafangu" or something.
but no, I we had to get pretty creative in Florence because
Yeah.
yeah, so driving there is pretty hectic, but I had a lot of fun doing it. So yeah, my father-in-law may have more stories about me driving in such a way that might be considered rule breaking, but certainly not you. You don't have anything to complain about.
No, not.
You were in a seat of comfort and safety and
Yeah,
security.
flying breathlessly down the Alps as we go around in
Flying
circles.
anywhere.
Um,
All right,
so
next place.
the next one, some of these are relatively close together, but I think Finland would be fun. It's pretty far north, which I like it. I guess it's the farthest north of maybe that I've been. I've been to Quebec City and Montreal. Are those comparable to Finland as far as the location,
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
latitude, longitude? But it's up there. But we've talked a lot about the Finnish school system,
Right.
and so that would be my keenest interest would actually be to visit a school. So I'm not on a sightseeing tour, going to see the countryside. Yes, I want to be north and experience the north for sure. But I think for me, more importantly, um, yeah, I want to visit some schools in Finland.
So I just looked at a map, and apparently Finland is considerably north of Quebec. So that would
Okay.
be the highest place that the most northern spot you'd ever gone if you were to go to Finland.
Yeah. So I would want to explore the north, and again, it's about the smells, the light, and it'll make a. I think it would make an impression, but I would schedule a few school visits as well.
All right. So we have Romania, we have Italy, we have Finland,
Mhm.
which we'll get back to Finland here in a little bit. But what is your next spot? 3 more to go.
Oh, I want to go to Scotland.
Okay. You can wear that little Rascals hat that you got on right now.
Yeah. So Little Rascals. I bought this in Quebec City, by the way. It's a very expensive hat. Um, but
You look like one of the older members of the cast of Newsies or something like that. Just
okay, no, no, no. I'm not from Newsies. It's a classy hat. So Edinburgh would I'd want to visit. I'd probably fly into there. Want to visit the castle there.
sure.
Um, but there's a great film, one of my very favorite, called Local Hero.
Well, hero,
Uh,
yes.
and it was on the coast there, and I'm not sure. I think it's probably on the eastern coast, but it could be on the western coast. But I think probably by Aberdeen or something. But it was called Furness, and so Furness is actually on the other side. And so, but anyway, I would like to visit that and just see that landscape, which seemed incredible, from the film. But also, the most important part is to go into a Scottish pub, and I'm not talking about going there and having a sip or two for an hour and leaving. I want to spend the whole day there. I want to get there as soon as they open their doors and be there until they close down. I just want to be a fixture, drinking pints in in Scotland all day, and then maybe the next day, because then they'll know me and they'll know what I drink, and they'll all shout Steve or something like that as I walk in. But Scotland's pretty high on the list, and it's been on the list for a long time.
Well, it's interesting. I've not been and I've not heard of Inverness outside of the movie. Now, I've been to Inverness.
Mhm.
Actually flew into Inverness and almost ended up in a fight with an drunken Australian documentary film crew. If you like your stories there, that's a good one. But
You want to flesh that out a little bit? Um, there's a statute of limitations.
and we may leave that for another day. But it was an interesting, and I like the idea of staying in a bar the entire day because that's that way. I mean, people sometimes will go into a pub in Ireland or Scotland for like 20 minutes and think they've had an experience, and they have had an experience, but you get the full tapestry of the human condition in that particular town and in that pub by
Mhm.
staying there an entire day. I mean, if you're willing to spend the day to do that, I think that could be one of the best cultural experiences you could have.
That's it. And so and it would be just so easy to do. and it is on the western side for Ness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'd want the pub to be there. I don't want to recreate the film or anything with the same characters popping out and the character named Stella coming to serve me or something. But yeah, that's right up there, and that would end up being a great day.
Hmm. All right. Trip number 5.
It's relatively similar in that it's Ireland.
Okay.
So it makes sense, kind of to pair them. Word on the street is that on my mother's side, on the Harkin side, we have a little bit of Scotch Irish, and it was always presented Scottish Irish, Scotch Irish.
Okay.
So it's in the blood. Um, I really love the accents in Ireland, and that would be exciting. And it's the I mean, I neglected to say I would like to drink scotch in Scotland, and so
That
that
goes
might
without
be
it goes
so I
without
think
saying. So
yeah, so a whole day of scotch, a whole day of beer in maybe 2 different pubs, that could be great. But Ireland is specific to drinking Guinness and, having it poured properly in a place. I mean, the Guinness is bound to be dramatically better, and I want to be that guy on the end of the bar, wearing this hat or a different hat, but probably this hat, just kind of a fixture, in Ireland, hearing the sounds, listening to the music of the voices, and so there's going to be a day drinking Guinness, and then exploring a lot of really great Irish whiskeys another day, and there for that, I'm not just going to stick with one drink, but I'm going to you know, ask them to surprise me. I'm saying, I want you to take care of me all day, go from the middle to the very top shelf, and
okay.
let's take time with this. And then I don't really know a lot about Scottish food, but Irish food, kind of comfort food, um, shepherd's pie, whatever it is, something with sausage. I would eat a few meals in that to maintain
Would
the
have
drink.
to.
Yeah, yeah.
So you basically want to travel the world so you can be like Norm at the end of the bar. Just
It's more intellectual. I mean, you and I did a philosophical tour to see
that,
Heidegger and Nietzsche,
that's true.
and I've seen you and I saw where Martin Luther wrote, translated the New Testament. And then
We have seen some stuff over the years.
yeah, yeah. So, but no, this is a lot of this has to do with drinking and vampires so far.
All right. And now is the last locale. Where would you go?
Well, it's a place that'll make it on your list, and who knows? You and I have traveled everywhere. We'd probably be likely doing some of this together, or all of it for that matter. But I would definitely not want to shuffle off this mortal coil without visiting Israel.
Okay.
And
Now,
there's
what for you?
yeah,
What is the draw of Israel?
um, it's to see all of the places that we've read about and read in the Bible and other accounts. So not just going to Jerusalem and setting up shop.
Right.
Um, but you can it's just so ideal for walking, particularly when it's a war zone because nobody's going to be there. So you kind of have your run of the place, but
You won't be bothered by tourists.
no, not at all. So yeah, I mean these places like the Sea of Galilee. Um, there's a place, a valley of Megiddo, which is by all accounts the site of Armageddon, the biblical Armageddon. It's actually a place.
Okay.
Uh, Mageddon comes derivation from Tar Megiddo, Armageddon, and
Okay.
so it is a place where you can, and I've seen it a lot on YouTube. You can look over this plain, and it's like, I mean, there have been more battles there than any place in the world, because it's really this crossroads um, spot, but it's in more northern Israel. But I would want to spend some time there, spend a lot of time walking and all of the biblical sites, and we're talking New Testament, Old, and get a feel. You get a feel for the scope and size of some place. Just like I've spent several times going to Dealey Plaza in Dallas to see the site of the JFK assassination. And it was much smaller a location than it looks. It looks like this sprawling thing on television with the grassy knoll. The grassy knoll is very small.
Right.
And and so I want to get a feel for that. Israel itself is incredibly small. And so I imagine, navigating I mean, yes, it's dangerous. I would bring somebody like you as a bodyguard, but yeah, there are so many places there that I would want to do it justice and maybe spend 3 or 4 weeks there.
So that's a very interesting. So yeah, so I think when you look at where you want to go, I mean, there's places that are on your list, but maybe not possible. At least not in the short term. It's not possible. But and then there's other places I think most people might put on their list. But then there's always that draw of places that you may or may not in reality be able to go to.
Right. But I think all of these are relatively accessible.
Okay.
You know, I wouldn't say I just have to visit the Gaza Strip. That's not where I'm going to try to walk.
That might be pushing your luck a little bit. So
Yeah, and this is not something I'm planning for the summer. I'm
yes.
saying in the time I have left, I'd like to visit those 6 locations.
Okay. I hope you get there. I hope I get there with you on a couple of these occasions, like for example, Israel. Because I will
Right.
say I got close to getting because for our dear listeners who do not
Yeah.
know, I'm Jewish, and so it has always been a goal, an objective of mine to make it to Israel, and I almost got there when we were coming back from the Gulf War because the group of ships we were in, one group went to Haifa, and the other group went to Malaga in Spain.
Mhm.
And my lieutenant, knowing I was Jewish, was trying to work out a temporary assignment for me to go to the other group of ships that were going to Haifa because we were headed for Malaga. And it never worked out. It was very nice of him to try to make that happen. Or maybe he's just trying to get rid of me. I don't know. But
Maybe a little of both. Yeah.
but there was a chance that I could have gotten there to Haifa, but it never happened. So it's one of those places that I think as of right now, I would have to go by myself. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable having my wife or daughter with me. I wouldn't have a problem going there by myself, but I think having my family with me would cause a little bit of concern. So
Okay, well, we may consider that the 2 of us because I'm much safer, following right behind you the whole way.
well,
So, well, what about you, Herr Miller? You've been everywhere, so to me, I'm going to be surprised because I imagine you're picking places you haven't been before.
in most cases, yes. In a couple of places, no, because when for us this is not just a philosophical exercise. We're trying to balance where I would be interested to see, where my wife would be interested to see, and at least one place where my daughter wants to see, because ostensibly this is going to be for her, so she should probably have some sizable say in the kind of places that we go to.
Ah,
But
so now I'm starting to guess a little bit, but I'm not going to say anything.
okay. And the other limit is that this, in all likelihood, is going to happen during the summer. And Jen said there was no way in hell we would go to some place like Ethiopia, which I have a great desire to go to, or the aforementioned Israel, because it would just be burning hot. And to her, that makes no sense to
Oh.
travel around the world just to sweat someplace different.
I would insist on the heat there. That's part of the pageantry.
Well, yes, I can be sold on that. My wife, however, cannot be sold on that. Um, so I think the first place we would go to, keeping in mind that we're staying away from the middle of the planet, the first place that we talked about going to is Argentina.
Argentina.
Argentina. And so the idea of going to Buenos Aires or going to the Patagonia or someplace like that, where we have the ability to kind of soak up a Latin American feel, but also a Latin American country, also known for its European flair, because, of course, Argentina does have deep connections to Europe. Unfortunately, also to Nazis, but but outside of that, some very lovely people in Argentina. I speak Spanish, and I'm certainly not fluent, but we'd be able to get along, I think, all right in Argentina. Although there's a very distinctive Argentinian accent. If you've never heard it before, it's quite different from the rest of Latin America. But just the food, I'm a big fan of Argentinian food, which is a lot of meat. The idea of a barbecue, the way we think about it here in Texas, there is an equivalent in Argentina, and so I think Buenos Aires, Argentina, with maybe a couple of side trips outside of the city to see the countryside would certainly be worth a first visit.
So let me ask a question about geography. I've been to Melbourne, and it was in the summer. I was surprised. I shouldn't have been, just how chilly it was, but I know it's basically in Antarctica.
Yeah.
And the bottom tip of Argentina, uh, it's well below the equator. So
Yeah.
what's the weather like there?
So, as you realized, when it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it
Yeah.
is winter in the southern hemisphere. And so, the idea of going to Argentina, say like in June or July, however cold it gets in Argentina, we would no doubt be subject to that. And um, so Australia, New Zealand, places like that, when it's summer here, it's winter there. And for my wife, who detests the heat, this is a kind of a win-win in her mind.
Mhm.
Not only do you avoid the heat, but you embrace the cold. Someplace like Buenos Aires would be kind of cool because of where it's located. It's located, if my geography serves me well, Buenos Aires is not far from Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay. And so, we could potentially hit a couple capital cities there.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, during the summer, it would be quite pleasant, if not downright cold at times, I would assume, in Argentina.
You never really hear about the harsh Argentinian winters.
No, you don't.
Um, so, but I imagine. Well, is it mountainous there? What's the terrain even like?
So a lot of Argentina is flatlands. There's an area down to the south called the Pampas, which is kind of like these large, kind of flat prairie lands. This is where the gauchos, the famous Argentinian cowboys, this is where they apply their craft. You go down south, you start getting some mountain areas. You're basically in the kind of the residual areas of the Andes, which it goes up and down the west coast of South America. And that southern portion of of Argentina is called Patagonia. And so you have glaciers, you have mountains, um, you have some pretty rugged terrain, not a lot of cities. Matter of fact, I don't think there's any major city in the southern part of the country. But the middle of the country is kind of like large grassland areas, and you start getting into the north of the country, and you're getting into the forests and the jungles or what have you that predominates South America. So,
Wow. Okay. Um, I was thinking you might want to put a toe into Bolivia, just because you could. And we talk a lot about Bolivia, in our movie references.
people have probably traveled thousands of miles to be at this place.
Yeah, you'd be just this could be the garden spot of the whole country. Yeah, we've done stranger things, going to some place just to quote a film.
Wow, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
You have.
Yeah. So, I'm sure there was a place where we talked about, oh, hell, what's that place in New Mexico?
Tucumcari.
Tucumcari, yes. And so, if you're familiar with the Sergio Leone, Eastwood films, the Western films, then you might recall the town Tucumcari. But So yes, Argentina, stop number one. Stop number two would likely be South Africa. Now, South Africa, this is partly my daughter's interest because we're talking about animals, we're talking about national parks, we're talking about the typical kind of um, uh, not really safari, because when you think about safari, that's more Kenya and Tanzania. Those are the places where most people go for what might typically be referred to as a safari. But South Africa does have some of the most beautiful national parks in the world, and I think that's one of the places where my daughter would be keen to visit. Would be South Africa.
So what would you actually do in South Africa?
Well, I imagine a lot of it's going to depend upon what's available to do. But I mean, I think she wants to spend some time. My daughter wants to spend some time, like in a national park. Um, And so I would think that we would at least spend a couple of days in one of the major cities in South Africa, like Johannesburg or Pretoria. Maybe not Cape Town. It just depends because Cape Town is like way, way, way south. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of the national parks are in the north. Pretoria and Johannesburg is actually in an area that used to belong to the Zulus when the British were kind of staking out their claim. They had to deal with them. When you get into the northwest, that's a little bit more deserty, I think, and so
Mhm.
uh, it could be the northeast might be the portion of the country we would end up in.
So you would actually fly from Argentina to South Africa.
To South Africa, yes.
Okay, over a lot of ocean.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a lot of ocean, and so so one of the things that's kind of daunting about planning this is the amount of territory you're covering.
Mhm.
And that goes for the next step, the next two spots. Because from South Africa, we would then go to, for my second time, but my wife and daughter's first time, Iceland.
It seems like you're jotting around a little bit from the south way up to Iceland. Wow.
Yeah, there's no easy way to do it,
Okay.
and
Well,
so it's one of those things where, and it may be that we will have to change what our itinerary is based upon what's practical. And maybe we stick to the south, maybe we stick to the north,
well,
just as a question of practicality and trying to maximize the time that we have off to do that.
it could be done here, Miller. I mean, I assume you're going to end up in some place in Europe, but it's like a circle if you go from Dallas up to Iceland, and then you work your way down to the Europe, then you circle back, you know, to South Africa and Argentina, and you're home. So you make kind of a circle, but circle to the right.
Circle, yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, it's possible. It's just that I think there's going to be no way to avoid like a massive 1 to 2 day travel day, and so at some point you're going to have to make a huge jump. And so I think that's one of the reasons why, this is not firm yet, because again, I think it depends upon how easy it is to do. Have you ever had any desire to go to Iceland?
Um, well, yeah, I was intrigued when you went there for what was it, your 50th birthday?
My 50th
Um,
birthday, yes.
yeah, I love the photographs, and then it would definitely be far north. I mean, often you get little screensavers that come up, and Iceland's a big one that comes up. It's just the type of countryside that, very, I mean, it combines a lot of beautiful landscape, different elements of it. And I really like the sugar cubes, Bjork, and that's one of the coolest things
The
ever.
sugar cubes.
Unless you really listen to Bjork and spend some time, don't just go on your first impression. It gets under your skin.
Wasn't she the one that wore a meat dress to like an award show or something like that?
Sounds like her. She was a bit of she was a performance artist as well as had a cool, but somehow the sugar cubes fell apart. I think that the guy who played trumpet was putting himself as the lead of the band or something when it was all Bjork. And
So
But I
he failed to understand his role.
so yeah. So is this your choice or your daughter's choice or your wife's choice?
Now, this is more my wife's choice because my
Okay,
wife
cool.
never had an interest in Iceland. And when I
Yeah,
told her that me and my friends were going to do that for my 50th, I think you were invited and I think you
yeah.
weren't able to do it.
I remember that.
When I set out to do it, I think initially she says, "Well, go and have at it. That way, I don't have to ever go with you in the future," because she had no interest. But by the time I was done with my planning, which I'm a very meticulous planner when I travel, and by the time she heard those stories, and then by the time she saw the photographs and the stories after I came back, she now has a desire to go to Iceland. And so Iceland, I think, would be more my wife, although I certainly would never turn down an opportunity to go back there. But
Wow. Well, if you're looking to cut down on this long flight, you could just stop in Greenland because by the summer, your passport will work there. You're, uh, you, it's a quick hop from the Gulf of America up to Greenland.
she's almighty.
Oh, I,
We're gonna get comments and so like that. Well,
I
which
do.
I want comments. So listeners, please give comments. What would you
Uh,
where would you go? So
I know where they want us to go, but
stop number 4 would be Finland. And
Finland.
so
I want
the
to be
reason
like Ed McMahon. Finland. Say it back to you. What's your
Finland.
reason? Are you going to visit a school too, or you have another agenda?
Am I going to do what now?
Well, I said I want to go there basically to visit one of these Finnish schools or a bunch of them. What's your draw?
Yeah. So first of all, I have no intention of doing anything that smacks of work in
Yeah.
any of my
Good one.
destination. But but for me, I was always fascinated by Finland. For those of you who do not know, Finland was on the razor's edge of the Cold War. When I was doing my master's work, and when I had this is going to sound so pretentious, when I had my study
At Oxford?
abroad, say again.
At Oxford?
This is when I went to Oxford. I studied at Oxford as a master's student for a semester, and we were there. And part of what we had to do is we had to do some sort of Cold War kind of research paper, and I focused on Finland. So Finland was most known for a president that they had by the name of Eero Kekkonen. He was the president of Finland for most of the early decades of the Cold War. And what he ended up establishing is something called the Finnish paradox. And so first of all, you should know that the Soviet Union tried on a couple of occasions to take Finland, and Finland proved a bit tougher of a nut to crack than they perhaps thought. And so Finland kind of had some chips to bargain with when it came time to how to deal with the Soviet Union post World War II. And so for Kekkonen, his idea is that the closer Finland got to the Soviet Union, it borders the Soviet Union, but the closer they got to the Soviet Union politically, the more they could protect their own democracy, freedom of speech, everything that goes within a free society. It seems at odds with one another, the two ideas. But basically, what Kekkonen spent his time in office doing was giving the Soviet Union no reason to distrust or view with suspicion the country of Finland. And as long as Finland maintained this path of staying close to the Soviet Union, they could maintain their democracy and their own way of doing things more in line with the rest of Europe, and still maintain a good relationship with the Soviet Union, never feel under the gun, as it were. And I was always kind of amazed by Kekkonen. I was amazed by his ability to pull this off. And I was amazed about the Finns being able to fight off the Soviet Union. It's a little bit like Yugoslavia when Marshal Tito ran that country. The Soviets were scared to death of Tito. I think the Soviets were, to an extent, scared of Finland. And I've always had a fascination. If you go to Helsinki geographically is just across the water from St. Petersburg on one side, Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, on the other side. And so it's kind of like this magic sweet spot, as it
Mhm.
were, to get a little bit of Finnish culture, but to then also get a sense of the area as it relates to the Cold War, what that must have been like.
Well, and now they are part of NATO, so potentially it's a real hot spot moving forward.
So, yeah, so Finland has taken, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Finland has taken a much more kind of a pro-European, or at least in how they do things. They don't. They, to my knowledge, Finland does not have the relationship with Russia that it did to the Soviet Union, and mainly because Russia is not the same threat, although still a threat. But Russia is not quite the same threat as it was when it was with the Soviet Union, and so yeah. So spot 5, is that 5, 4? That's spot 4.
You've given
Finland.
4, all great.
Yeah.
What's next?
So next would be the country of Japan.
Okay, you've been there.
I've been there. My wife has a great desire to go there. And as it's going to be summer, this might be an opportunity for me to finally check off an experience that I've been wanting for some time, and that is to see a Japanese baseball game. And so the idea would be to experience Japan. So we probably would be in Tokyo or somewhere near Tokyo, maybe Osaka, and then not only experience the history and the culture, which I've been there 3 times, and it's one of the most amazing countries I've ever been to, but to be able to then also go to see a baseball game.
Japanese baseball. I thought you were going to be poetic and talk about the cherries blooming in Japan.
Well, first of all, we're going to be there in summer, and the cherry blossoms
Yeah.
bloom in spring. So
Yeah, that would have been. I thought you would contrive for that to happen as well.
no.
Um,
But
so you
Japan,
know,
it's a very beautiful country. It's a very old country, and the antiquity of the country is still present. It is something that the Japanese feel very strongly about, for as much as they are in the tank over about technology and all things technology. You can go to restaurants and robots serve you and all this other crazy crap. But as much as they have these levels of modernity that have all the trappings that we know is a sacrifice when you go to technology to the degree that they do. There's also so much of the history that still exists, that still is an integral part of how they identify themselves, how they see themselves. And you really cannot take Japanese history and culture out of the character of Japan. And I just think it's one of the coolest places I've ever been to.
wow. So where were you during your time of service? Did you cover some ground?
So when I was there in the service, I was in Okinawa, which is in the southern archipelago, the Ryukyu Islands. It's an
Uh-huh.
archipelago that actually is south of. So Japan is made up of 4 main islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, Kyushu, and then below Kyushu are the string of islands called the Ryukyu Islands, and that is where Okinawa is. So I was there when I was in the service, and I took 2 groups of students there to Nagaoka, which is to the northwest of Tokyo, near the Sea of Japan, near the coast. And so that's where I have been previously. And I've been to Tokyo as well as part of our experiences with students.
Hmm. Wow. So you probably know people there too.
I got a guy. So, so
Um, well, it sounds like a real pleasant part of your trip, honestly. I mean,
I think it
I
would be.
yeah, for bringing your family, I think that would definitely be a highlight.
And the last stop, and I would be very curious about this, but New Zealand.
New
As
Zealand?
Dr. Bourgeois noisily types in New Zealand to his keyboard.
Well, I need to know. No, I've been to Australia. I know where New Zealand is, but aren't they basically the same? Just kidding. We joke around.
For any Kiwis listening, you can go ahead and put a comment in the comment section.
Okay. Well, let's hear about New Zealand.
Well, so anytime I tell somebody who's younger than me that I want to go to New Zealand, they say, "Oh, do you want to check out the Lord of the Rings settings? Where it was filmed?" I was like, I tell them I've never thought of the Lord of the Rings a day in my life. So no, I'm not going there for that. But as far as like just the mountainous beauty of the country, the kind of the history of the Maori and the kind of their role and what their history was like, I think to be able to explore both of those histories would be something. It would be quite something. We were supposed to go to Australia in 2020. I don't know if you know, there was a pandemic that canceled all that. So that trip, when we got our money back, turned into a refurbished kitchen, which we cashed in quite nicely when we sold the house. But the idea of still wanting to go to that part of the world, I think New Zealand. It could easily be Australia as well because we have some good friends at Australia, and Melbourne, and then Brisbane. And so those are two places that we were going to stay when we went to Australia in 2020. So I can imagine it could go either way, either Australia or New Zealand. But for me, I think New Zealand seems more appealing in some way.
So you've been to Australia though.
I've not. We were planning that trip, and actually we had the entire trip booked and
Mhm.
ready to go when we were going to leave in June of 2020. And then when the shit hit the fan over the pandemic, then everything got canceled. And so we had to kind of get all of our money back. And
Okay, well, you could take Ryanair and go right from Australia to New Zealand. Do they have that everywhere or just in Germany?
Ryanair, I don't know if it's Ryanair's
Isn't that
over
what
there.
it's called? They have some really inexpensive airline that
Yeah, those
like $10.
those duct tape airline places. And
I guess so. Um, so I was expecting from the beginning that you would lead with Egypt. What's in that conversation, or should I
Egypt,
even bring it up?
Egypt is going to have to be a separate trip. And my daughter has been incredibly fascinated with Egypt for years.
Mhm.
And I think that's still something that we would like to go to, but it cannot be in June and July and August.
So it
Uh,
is summer there.
yeah, it can't be in summer. My wife, there's no way in hell my wife would tolerate flying into Cairo in July. And so, so I can see Egypt being like a summer, like a Christmas vacation trip with my daughter. But it can't be during the summer. As much as I would want to go, it can't be during the summer.
Okay, and you would be hard pressed not to go to Casablanca and do all kinds of quotes. I mean,
That's on the other side of the continent, Steve.
well, no, oh, Cairo. Okay, I was looking at the. I don't know this really well, but how far is Cairo from Casablanca?
Well, it's
Let's see.
across North Africa, so
Oh,
it's got to be several thousand miles, I would imagine.
Casablanca on the brain. Okay, I see North Africa.
Thank God you weren't a geography teacher.
I could have been. I could have been one of the greats. Okay, I see now. Yeah, you have to go clear across the continent. Well, we can cut out that part. We just wave our magic wand. Uh,
No. We got to own it.
Ignorance is something that I do own. We all have our areas of expertise and directionality. Is that a word? My
Sure, we
direction
could make it one.
path,
Yeah.
and so knowing my way around the globe, I need help. So that's why I would need somebody to lead me, or we could have missed the continent
Well,
entirely.
dear listeners, we've now come to the crux of the issue.
Yes.
Steve needs help. And
I
so
need,
if anyone would
need
like
help.
to
I'm
help
getting
Steve,
better. This is a good lesson, and people who are listening, I know there are 2 or 3 or 4 out there. They should do it like I did and have the globe open, unless they're experts like Herr Miller. And this was, I mean, you didn't show off, but you really could have because you know so much more than you just said about these areas. I mean, this is in your wheelhouse, so you are.
I
Um,
think because it's in my wheelhouse, it's one of those things where you almost have to kind of throttle back a little bit because, especially when, in regards to my wife and my daughter, because they don't care a tenth of the degree to which I care about certain things. And so I believe it's my right to beat them down a little bit about history and geography, but I think there has to be a limit to that in order for us to have a good relationship. So it's uh it's one of those things where I do have to kind of measure, and I do the same thing with my friends. I can't unleash on my friends the full extent of my interest in history and geography because I got friends that will stick with me for a little bit, but not nearly to the extent that I would go if left unattended. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, I thought it was a capital idea, doing this.
yes,
One of your ideas,
one of
and
many fine ideas, I think. So,
yeah,
but so
I like.
next week, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying I like my trip. I've never written it down before, but um,
I think it's a fine trip.
yeah. And actually, it's not as well. Nothing's as spread out as yours. You're going around the world, basically.
Yes.
Uh, well, much more localized, but exciting.
I think it's going to be exciting, and I'm just jazzed by the prospect of it. If you're listening and want to leave a comment, well, obviously you are listening, but for those of you who are listening, please leave a comment in wherever you leave comments on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this. Let us know where you would go if you had 6 stops to make. You can also follow us on Instagram, and that's the Old School Podcast 2021. Make sure that you like the episodes that you hear. Make sure you like the posts that you see. Follow us. Leave a message. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Just get a sense of who's there and who would like to kind of have their say in things. I think you and I are together next week, and then in 2 weeks,
Uh-huh.
we have Dr. Peter Worthing of TCU. He is a Chinese expert, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about some aspects of Chinese history, particularly the Boxer Rebellion. So that's going to be in 2 weeks on the 26th. And then we also have uh, Dr. David Bayajuan, who's from UTA. He's going to be talking to us about the British Empire. So, man, we got some primo folks stopping by on the podcast over the next month. Make sure you're tuned into that. And of course, don't forget the small, tiny, humble efforts of your 2 amenable hosts. Whenever a guest is not here, we definitely will still have interesting things to talk about. With that, she'll say adieu, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Miller. I have all kinds of other languages that I'm not going to share, but that when we talked about the world, I was going to break them out, but I didn't want to embarrass myself. So simply,
Okay.
Auf Wiedersehen. That's it.
All right.